Hello guys and welcome to the very last episode of this season's Tea with Timbsy, episode 8, and I'm very glad to say I'm joined by the one and only, an absolute giant of the broadcasting world. It is Laura Woods. How are you doing, Laura?
Hi, I'm good, thank you. Thanks for having me.
That's all good.
This is nice, isn't it?
Yeah, it's all right.
What have you got there, by the way?
It's Tea with Timbsy. This might have a bit more caffeine in it than a normal tea. It might be a coffee, but it is Tea with Timbsy. You're having tea?
I'm having a green tea with honey in it. If you haven't tried it, honestly try it. It's glorious.
Yeah, nice.
Because green tea tastes like piss, but it's good for you. But if you stick honey in it, it like takes the edge off and it's quite nice.
You've changed.
I know.
The Laura I knew a few years ago, she was like, just give me builder's tea. Normal milk, that's me.
That's true.
How have you been?
I've been good, yeah. I've been great. It's I always feel like every time someone asks me that, I always say I'm busy. And I have decided like not to say it as much because being busy is good and everyone is busy, but it's also boring if someone says, how are you? And you just go, well, I've been busy and stuff. Yeah, it's boring.
Yeah, but I also feel like when you say, oh, how are you? Being honest, right? Because you know how you just go on autopilot, how are you? And she's like, yeah, I'm good, or busy. It's like, no, how am I? Really stressed. I'm frazzled. I'm actually okay. I've been okay recently.
Yeah.
But you've been everywhere.
Yeah, I mean, do you know what? For the first time this summer, I know it seems like I've been everywhere, but I actually didn't do any football for any other broadcaster.
Okay.
Because I do Premier League with Sky.
Yeah.
So then while the Euros was on, I just got to watch it, and I didn't do any work. And you know what it's like around those events. You can take the sort of cash in hand jobs or those sort of things.
Yeah.
If my accountant's watching that, I don't ever do that. Yeah. But you know what I mean? Like you can take the kind of extra jobs and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I didn't. I just took some time off. I was still doing Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday and breakfast.
Yeah.
And it's just like having your weekends back is so different.
And also enjoying a major international tournament, right?
Yeah.
I haven't done that since like 2014. Because it's one that I haven't worked at for like, I worked for the first like week of it, but then after that I was like, oh my God, I can actually watch it with my mates. This is amazing.
Yeah, and
this is what all the crack's about.
As well, like the first game I went to was England-Scotland, and even though like the last game of the season had fans for the Premier League, like a small amount of fans, it still didn't really feel like quite the same. Carabao Cup had a few as well, but they were like way away from where we were. And I was walking like down Wembley Way and there were just like Scots everywhere, properly like going at it as well. It was amazing.
Sick.
And I just got this like really like buzzy feeling inside me. Like it's like, it was just back and it's normal again. Mm. And now I feel like we're kind of used to it, even though it's still going to feel different when the Premier League comes back this weekend and it's like properly like full stadiums. But yeah, I just missed it. And I missed actually being a fan rather than like going and actually working at the event. When
you say fan, you mean Arsenal fan or like actual just general fan?
Yeah, I like to just class myself as a general fan rather than an Arsenal fan.
Yeah, good. Wise. Very wise.
I think it is.
No, it's just, actually, I was going to ask you, okay, before that, so me and my friend Tommy, right? Because we're brainstorming for season 2.
Oh, nice.
Right? And one thing that I wanted to ask people at the beginning of the show, right, is before we get into the conversation, is if you're having tea, right? 3 people that you would have like a tea party with, sit down, have a tea, dead or alive, who would they be? It's like the age-old question, isn't it? But this one's tea, on brand.
Yeah, and everyone always says Muhammad Ali or the Queen or something like that.
Yeah, so I now sort of have my 3. It took me a while.
Go on, tell me your 3.
Okay, so 1, Arsene Wenger, but that's just a very personal thing for me, right?
A gent.
Then I was thinking someone like Christopher Hitchens, who's like super just intelligent and just a G. And then I was thinking like, okay, Queen's, Muhammad Ali, yeah, but...
Everyone says that though.
But then, actually, did I remember my 3rd one? No, I don't think I even decided on the 3rd one. It's too difficult.
You know what? It is, as you said that, it's quite a difficult question just to spring on someone, isn't it?
Yeah.
So I might need to have some time.
Okay.
I like that you said Arsene Wenger because I've never interviewed him and I've only met him once.
Yeah.
And I didn't even technically meet him. It was on the pitch. I think it was 2017 FA Cup, maybe.
Okay.
I was doing Arsenal Snapchat, so it was like a wicked job. It was so funny. It was just like reactions to everything.
Oh my God.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
Was it against, it was against Chelsea. It was when we beat City in the semi-final and Chelsea in the final.
Yeah.
And they were all like celebrating on the pitch and everything and all that sort of stuff. And he just walked past and I honestly froze out of like complete adoration.
Yeah.
And he just looked and went, like that. And I was
You're
like, and I literally
Yeah,
like
that's
looked around,
amazing,
went
yeah.
back. I was like, oh my God, it's him. That's a
Yeah.
lie. I met him twice when I was really, really little.
Oh, okay.
I met him at the training ground. It was
Okay,
amazing.
nice.
And
Yeah.
he's just insane, isn't he?
What a lovely guy.
Yeah.
Luckily I've interviewed him, like, only met him once and I interviewed him. That was at the Laureus Sport Awards. And that was like, it's just amazing. But I don't really remember it because I was so like, oh my God, like, it's you.
Yeah.
So it was sort of like, afterwards I was like, did I just do that? That's so weird.
Do you get, like, when you interview sports people and stuff like that, do you get where somebody, like, this happens a lot in, like, post-match interviews, your producer will be like, what was the best bit? And you're like, I can't remember any of it.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I do, because there is that, like, I don't know if it's being in the zone or being, you know, totally focused on what you're doing, or if it's like imposter syndrome or something, but like,
that.
yeah.
Yeah.
There are moments when, maybe not this, because this I'm kind of like comfortable with and like obviously with friends and stuff, but like when it comes to footballers or anyone I sort of feel a little bit not intimidated.
No.
But just someone, you know, a person that I'm like, wow.
Someone with like a big presence.
Yeah.
Because what I do is I'm like, I still do this even now. I'm always thinking of my next question. So I'm thinking about that so hard that it shuts off my like ears almost. Like I'm not listening. I'm just thinking, making sure that I've got my next question ready. I do that a lot with people like Jose or like, you know, big manager Carlo Ancelotti that you're like, oh God.
I think it depends on what sort of, I guess, interview you're doing as well, where like, if you know, your list of questions or whatever, but like I've found, as if I'm giving you tips on how to interview people, right? But like, so for me, and like this, for example, I really enjoy because I don't have to think of that. I have a list of like questions that I know I kind of want to ask, but it's more, I've really benefited from just listening to the person and actually like hearing what they say and making it a conversation rather than like, if I need to, I'll ask that next question, but there might be a better question I can use off the back of what you actually say.
It's the best, honestly, it's the best advice I've ever been given, which is the most simplest, and it's literally just to listen.
Yeah.
And if you have like the grace and like the blessing of time, it's like, and you can get that setting where you can just relax.
Yeah.
It's amazing, because a lot of the time when you get these sports people, you have to get certain questions in, and that is what your producer or your company want you to do, like absolutely do.
Yeah.
But if you can ever get any sports star away from the actual sport and just have a conversation with them, it's so much better. Like it's so much more, they open up so much more because they don't want to talk about sport either.
Yeah.
It's just that if you're doing it for Sky, you probably have to talk about sport.
Yeah, of course. So, I mean, you would all know that this is Laura Wood's the absolute just G when it comes to presenting broadcasting. Because it's been years now for you.
Yeah.
So you, I guess, like broke into mainstream stuff when it was like Sky and darts, right? Like, that was your first big TV gig, right?
So I was literally scrapping for years at Sky because I started off as a runner and then I was like scrapping for bits and bobs.
Sick.
It was so, honestly, being a runner at Sky was amazing at the time because it was like, you just got to go and work on loads of different sports and learn loads of different things. And I genuinely learnt every job along the way.
Yeah.
Because you do all of them on the way up. And reporting was one thing that I was told never to tell anyone that you wanted to do, or presenting. It's really
like
strange.
Play it cool sort of thing.
Really strange advice. I always remember someone saying, like, don't tell the bosses because you're here to do this job.
Yeah.
And they don't want to hear that you want to be a presenter because everyone wants to be a presenter.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, but I'm not like, oh, I want to be a presenter. It wasn't like that. I was like, no, I want to be a presenter. I was like, I've done journalism at university. Like I'm here for a reason. Like I've got my foot through the door and I want to learn the jobs, but I want to be a presenter.
Yeah.
So I used to take any kind of scraps on anything that I could do. So even like the post-match interviews or the pre-match interviews rather for darts at the World Darts Championship were like, honestly, like you've been to the Worlds before, right? It is unbelievable.
Amazing, yeah.
So imagine like being 21 and walking in and it's like Ali Pali, and even with like no fans, that was the first gig I ever worked on. And I was like, what is this? Like it was just insane. And then all the fans came in and stuff, and nobody wanted to do, we called them quotes. Nobody wanted to do quotes because it's like pre-match interview, darts players, like all through all the different like rounds and stuff, all the way up to the final. And I was like, well, I want to do them. That's interviewing. And your face and your voice aren't used, but you're still learning how to do it. So I always used all those little opportunities as like learning opportunities.
Yeah, for sure.
And I'm obsessed with people. Like I love like difficult people are actually brilliant in our job because it gives you the chance to try and unravel them or figure out, they're like little Rubik's cubes, aren't they? And then you just kind of have to like tick, tick, until you get the best out of them. Yeah. And I loved it. And there were so many quirky characters in darts. So then gradually, like, it's a long story, but I just tried everything and I just knocked on all the different doors at Sky, and a lot of them would say, no, we don't have opportunities. And then I started doing things like bowling and ping pong.
That's so good.
Speedway, like and for me, all of it was amazing. Yeah. So I was like, it's live and it's
obviously
amazing.
you like sport anyway, but that I've always said that as well for when people like ask, well, can I do what you do, or how do I do it, right? Yeah. Is that one of the things I've always said is like just being open to do anything, like because you have no idea what you might like or be really good at. So and just being so open.
Show it all respect. That's the best thing you can ever do about any job in our industry. I guess it transfers to anything, but like show every job that you take on maximum respect. Yeah. Because you never know who's watching. And like you say, if you like sport, all of those sports I just mentioned, like people scoff at it. They're like, oh, 10-pin bowling or like ping pong. Yeah. I swear to God, the ping pong world championships were insane.
That's amazing. That's a quote I never thought I'd hear from you.
I swear to God, like they were so good. Again, it was in Ali Pali. And like Maxim Shmiryov, I always remember he was like the Russian champion and he'd won it like 7 years in a row and no one could beat him. And then Andrew Bagley, he was like our English representative, he was in the Olympics as well, went in and absolutely like smashed it up, got all the way to the final. I think he actually beat him in the semi-final and then went on to win it. Yeah. And we were like, oh my God, like Andrew Bagley. And then we were like, listen to me kicking everything out of the way. I'm so excited. Yeah. But it was like the most amazing thing. And it's so fast paced. So we'd all just be sitting there watching it. It's like ding, ding, ding. I loved it. I was obsessed.
That's sick.
Yeah. And then you move on to the next thing and then, you know.
Yeah, exactly. Like, do you ever look back and like feel there was one pivotal job that you got? Or, because obviously it's always, when you look at it retrospectively, right, it all makes sense because you're just like, I did that and did it. And now it's like, I belong here and this is, you know, it's really like logical steps almost. But in the moment, it's like, I have no idea where this is leading, right? Yeah. I'm guessing you didn't have like a super plan of this is what I'm going to do.
No, because I think when I was in the middle of doing it, I couldn't, there was no kind of path. Like I remember doing 2 or 3 Sky Sports News screen tests, and I'm not a newsreader. Anyone that knows me knows I'm not a newsreader. I'm not a natural reader either. But that's not me. Like if I'd have got a job doing that, it would have been the worst thing that could have happened to me. Because I don't think I would have enjoyed it. And you're limited when you do newsreading because it's somebody's script, it's somebody's auto cue, it's somebody else's questions. So for me, like the pivotal moment was being really shit at that, and it destroyed me for like 2 years. It destroyed me because it saps all your confidence when you do a screen test and you're shit, and everyone knows you're shit because they're watching, and it's just obvious. So I was like, oh, I can't be a presenter, and then I went like the kind of long way round. But I remember we went to the Euros 2016. We went to France, and we did like this amazing like tour of France in like basically little camper vans, or it wasn't even camper vans, they were like Postman Pat vans. Yeah. And like with me and Smithy, you know Smithy. Yeah. It was like a really good crew. And we had this contract, Sky had this contract with Facebook where you had to do 10-minute lives every day.
Okay, nice. Yeah.
And like for the early stage of the competition, obviously that's easy because there's so many games and there's so much to talk about.
So much to bounce off of,
Yeah, and then towards like, as soon as the knockout round started happening, and we'd have like days where there'd be no football. And I always remember sitting in the garden one morning and we had nothing to talk about. And it was the Euro, so Messi wasn't even interested, wasn't even involved. And we just stumbled on the Messi-Ronaldo standard debate because we were reading the comments section and we were hungover as well. So we were like, we have to go live, let's just get it done. And like we sit there with our phones and me and Smithy would have a chat, me and whoever else, and you'd read the comments out and you'd get past all the like, get your tits out, all that sort of stuff, like blah, blah, blah. And then there was one about Messi and Ronaldo, and then we just started chatting about it, and our views for that just went through the roof. Okay. And after the Euros, after we'd done that like for 10 minutes every day, we figured out the formula for doing those lives. But I realised when I came home that I'd stumbled on what I kind of call like my natural voice. Yeah. If that makes sense. So you know when you start presenting, it's not your voice.
Well, yeah, because you start and you have to play a role, right? You have to go like, and this is me. Yeah. This is me on
Hi
camera.
Guys. And it's cringe. And you're like, that's not me and that's not who I am, or it's not my personality. So those lives just gave me the opportunity to just be myself
Yeah.
and taught me
Feel
how to do it.
comfortable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was a big turning point. And then Talksport, I think, was the other one.
Nice. Oh yeah, because Talksport. I remember when you joined, and was it Talksport, and then that interview came out where was it on Daily Mail? I think I read it.
Which one was that?
Where basically said, because it was obviously a big deal that you joined Talksport, which is like a traditionally really like macho male kind of, you know, standard male football fan base. And then you join and you're like, I'm here to fuck shit up. Sort of thing. But it was great though, obviously it's a massive thing. Because you feel like there are people, obviously I speak to Alex Scott as well, and it's like, you must know now you're like one of the, I guess, spearheads of women in sport media, which has been, you know, so like underrepresented for years. But now it's like you're one of the top dogs.
Yeah, it's weird. I still don't.
Trailblazing, leading by example.
But you know what? It's funny because I never really see it like that, because when I was younger, you know, I had like all the Claire Baldings and like all the Gabby Logans, and I was like looking up to those women. So I usually feel like a bit uncomfortable with it. I get that with Talksport, it's the breakfast show role, and that's not been done by a woman, and and Alan's had it for 20 years, and again it's like a laddie culture and all that sort of stuff. So I get it there. But for me, it's like when I grew up, I never even looked at those women as women.
Yeah.
I just looked at them as broadcasters.
Yeah, true.
Yeah. And whatever's happening at home, like my mum was always amazing, and she was a rugby coach, and she was never like afraid of any of those kind of environments. So I wasn't either. I just like follow behind her and it would be normal.
I'm guessing you wouldn't even feel like I'm in a really kind of like male environment at all, like male dominated environment, because even then thinking about that now, it's like, oh yeah, you've got like, was it Sue Barker on Question of Sport as well? Like, I remember watching that every week, and
Me
it's like,
too.
this is amazing.
Ali McCoist and John Parrott.
Yeah,
they were the best.
Do you remember Big Break?
Oh my God, I loved
Big Break.
Was
so
Jim
good, wasn't
Davison.
it? Yeah,
yes,
it was
I loved
unreal.
it. The Sony games. We used to watch that Saturday night in Gladiators as well.
Gladiators. Oh my God.
Did you watch Blind Date though?
Yeah, Blind Date with Cilla Black.
Yeah, Cilla Black.
Amazing. R.I.P. Obviously.
Sorry.
See, it was amazing though. It was so good.
You know her real name's Cilla White?
No way.
I swear to God.
Are you joking?
I
didn't know
to
that.
God. I hope that this wasn't a trick, but when we were younger, that was the rumour that her name was Cilla White.
Why was it? My stage name is actually Cilla Black.
I swear to God. Google it. And also, God register.
Yeah, obviously, yeah, of course. But yeah, so now, but you know what's really weird though, is that now you are like one of them. As in, when we're kids, right, and we look at like presenters and broadcasters, and it's like, you know, Gary Lineker is the host of Match of the Day, and you know, Sue Barker, Question of Sport, is like, now you are, especially you, are getting to the level where like that is feasible and that is kind of a natural next step. But I'm guessing you don't think about it, right? Because you don't take yourself out of, you know, your life and what you're doing to look at it in a larger context. Right?
No, like I was listening to Jake Humphrey's podcast, you know, the High Performance podcast.
Really good. It's like a better version of this.
No, this this is equally as spectacular.
Oh, thank you. Yeah.
But for a different audience as well.
Yeah.
So Jake's one, I remember he was doing something with someone, and he was talking about a 5-year plan.
Yeah.
About having the importance of having a 5-year plan. And I've never had one.
I've never. I'm so glad you've said that as well, because I feel like, and that's also really good for a lot of people to hear as well. Like, I'm actually quite jealous of people who've always had those plans where they went to uni and then it's like, I know what I'm going to be and I know what I'm going to do and this is how I'm going to do it. I'm like, how the fuck do you know that? Because I have no idea, and I've never at any stage had like any plan. Yeah, ever. Me neither. I also think in the industry that we work in now, it's so different to what it was 5 years ago, even 5 years ago. You know, you wouldn't like, my plan, maybe when I started out as a runner at Sky, would have been, because the only thing you could really do at that time at Sky would have been a Sky Sports News presenter. Yeah. So in my head, I was like, right, it wasn't even a 5-year plan. I was always like, right, next year I'm going to do this, next year I'm going to do this. If I'd have like really focused on that, the world changed so much in those 5 years that I suddenly realised, and my knowledge of the world, I was like, well, that's not what I want to do. Yeah. All these doors are opening in like social media and like online and YouTube and stuff like that. So, you know, maybe you can have like a broad spectrum, like a 5-year plan, but you don't know what opportunities are going to come up. Yeah, I guess there's no like one way of like I guess, succeeding or getting to what you want, but it's also more just like, it's nice to actually see people who have succeeded, who haven't had a plan.
Yeah.
Because it's like, it gives a lot of people who don't have plans, it's like, I can also do it.
And sit down and write a plan when you're 18 and see if it's the same plan when like...
Mental.
Everything changes, like your life changes so quickly, so... Yeah.
I mean, you always, because I did French and Spanish at uni, right? You did broadcast journalism.
Print journalism.
Oh, print journalism.
Yeah.
So you always knew you wanted to get into some sort of like reporting, that journalistic side of things, right? Yeah,
I used to flip-flop. So when I was younger, I wanted to do news round, and I used to like send in, like, do you remember press packers?
Yes. Do you remember Exchange?
Oh my God.
Why are we doing this, by the way? We're showing our age now.
Oh, what was that one?
Ortis.
Oh, Ortis was such a legend, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Ortis, yes. And there was another one as well. Short Change was brilliant, wasn't it? Because it was like
unreal.
calling out people that have been like scammers and all that sort of stuff, which they should definitely bring back. Maybe they do, I don't know. But yeah, all of those like kids' TV things. I always remember seeing Fern Cotton on this show called Fingertips.
Okay.
And like it was just like a it was like a shit version of Blue Peter.
Okay. Yeah.
Really shit. And she had a girl next to her. I can't remember what her name is, but that's the point. And I remember looking at them.
Okay, yeah.
But that is the point, because I remember looking at her and then looking at Fern Cotton and being like, I don't know why, but she's a much better presenter than her.
Okay.
I remember it at the time thinking, wow, I'm much more, it's weird, isn't it? I remember analysing it going, I'm much more comfortable when she speaks.
So you sort of had that eye.
I knew there was something, I knew there was something that I liked about it, but I didn't know, and I knew I might want to do it, but I didn't know how to. And then as you grow up, like that job is deemed as like a dream job, isn't it? That you can't do. So I probably went to uni and did print journalism because it was, I remember someone saying, don't specialise as well in one thing, be broad. Yeah. And I loved writing. I loved like creative writing, and I like interviewing people. So all those things kind of put together said like print journalism. Yeah. And I did work experience at Croydon Advertiser, and it was fucking awful.
Really?
Like, it was so, like, it wasn't even what they were asking me to do. The people were amazing, really nice. It was pissing it down with rain for like the whole time, and I was doing like knocking on people's doors, saying, horrible. Your rent's rising, how do you feel about that? Will you give me a quote? And they were like, are you from the council? And I was like, no. They went, well, can you fuck off, please? And I was like, but can you just give me a quote?
Yeah, please, I'm trying to make my way in the world. I couldn't give a fuck.
Yeah, it was awful.
But that's what's amazing though, because you've done so much. Because like, it's nice, obviously, that it's not like everyone who's in this hasn't worked hard, right? But to see it go from you've done, you know, the work experience and the runner and whatever. Like, I haven't even done the runner aspect or anything, because ours are a little bit different, where I was like in very YouTube-centric land and you're more like traditional TV land. Yeah. But it's nice to actually hear like, oh, you've done all of these things. So it's like obviously fully deserved because you're good at what you do, but also it's because you've had to go through every stage. Yeah. Which I think is like, were there any times where you like going to give up?
Yeah. I remember one really clear time where I made the decision. So I'd done a few of those screen tests, and by the third one, I was like, this is shit. I was like, I cannot put myself through that again, because there's so much pressure on, there's so much pressure on presenting anyway. But there was like a climate in Sky Sports News, and I didn't get any feedback from them. And I emailed them and said, please, can I have some feedback? And I had to really chase that feedback. And my feedback was, go and watch the other Sky Sports News presenters and do what they do.
Oh, that's stinky.
Yeah, and I remember it so clearly, because I was like, that doesn't sound right to me, and I don't want to do that. And maybe they were just fobbing me off because they were like, oh, she's not a presenter, she's not natural, da da da. So just, you know, go and watch what they do, and it will never happen, essentially. Yeah. And my producer at the time was really keen on me becoming a producer, and he was like, you'll be really good at this, do it. And I remember producing for a while. I started producing and I was young, and I was the youngest producer at Sky. And I think as a producer, you either get a buzz from it or you don't. And you're in charge. And if that's what you want and that's what you like, then you'll go far being a producer. And I liked it, but I didn't love it. Yeah. And I didn't really
get that feeling, right?
I didn't get it.
Yeah.
Then as soon as I'm talking to someone and interviewing someone, that's when like that buzz comes. And I was like,
it's sick.
It's different, isn't it? Yeah. So then I remember I made a decision to produce.
Yeah.
I was like, fine, I'm just going to give everything I've got to producing. And within like maybe 2 months, I was bored. And then I had one conversation with the presenter, and he was like, there's still time to do it, because you feel pressures of age and like all these different things. You think it's too late to go into something. And he was like, why don't you just like make your own stuff? And I really thought about that. And I thought about YouTube, and I thought about all the access to the darts players that I get, and the fact that there's spare cameras knocking about that do behind the scenes and all that sort of stuff. So I was like, all I need to do is borrow that camera. And I was good at the job I was doing already on the darts, which was assistant producing, which was everything else behind the scenes, running that part.
Yeah.
So I was like, just give me 10 minutes after each game. I'll pop out, do an interview, I'll come back in. And I did it. And then I would script stuff and cut it all together. I learned how to edit, cut it all together, do the voiceover.
Sick.
And then they went out as YouTube clips. And that was really the first kind of, that got me other opportunities, because then you have something physically to say to someone, look, I can do it.
Yeah. Otherwise they're just like, just taking your word for it. Of like, I know what I'm doing.
Please, I can do it. And then you don't just get it. I've never met anyone, don't know if you found this, but I've never met anyone that as soon as you give them a microphone and you ask them to do something, they're like natural straight away. Yeah. It's so unnatural.
It does. Yeah, there's definitely a learning curve, and some people are more natural at it than others.
Yeah.
Like even just from when I started learning, and obviously Poet and Vuj, like the way, I think being with two people, it like helps as well to bounce off. Like the chemistry's there, but that Poet is a very like natural, just kind of outgoing person that you stick a camera on and he'll be the same kind of wacky person, right?
But watch his early stuff, watch anything the first time he's ever had a camera in his face.
And then he's going to be less comfortable and whatever.
But I always think people look at presenters in the wrong way, because they look at them and go, oh my God, like, look how good that person is. But that person's had years of doing it.
Yeah, that is true.
Years.
I never really, because I'm guessing people ask you that all the time, and like I get asked as well. It's like, oh, yeah, you look like you know what you're doing and comfortable, right? And obviously now it's because we are comfortable on camera, because you just don't think about it at all. But I do remember like the first few shoots that I had to do by myself, and I look back as well, because they're all on YouTube as well. I'm literally shaking like a leaf. And all it was like saying one line to camera, and then it goes into me playing football. So I don't even need to like rehearse or anything. And I just remember I was like, hi guys, I'm here in Qatar with Bayern Munich. And I'm like, what the fuck am I doing? I'm like a cold dog outside. I'm like,
to be fair, if you're in Qatar with Bayern Munich, that's quite a big shoot.
But that's exactly. So I was shitting myself. I was like, this is a huge shoot. And then obviously it went really well. I was so lucky like that it went that well. But I just remember that I was just so nervous, and I was like, I can see it in my face, and I remember that feeling. But I still get that now. We touched on it before. Still get moments of that now where it's sort of that imposter syndrome as well, right? I don't know if you get it now, but because you've done it for so long, right?
Yeah.
And I spoke to Josh about this when he was on the show.
Denzel.
Yeah, obviously, and Josh is like, face of England, and like he's done so much, right? That he would be the last person I would think would get imposter syndrome. Like, I know I get it sometimes, briefly, just moments and moments. But he is like, of all my mates that I've known for years and years and years, he's the one that is like, you're destined to do something in front of camera. You're just too funny and too lively and personable to not do something on camera. So then when he said that, I was like, oh my God, I'm so happy you said that, because that makes me feel better about myself, because I wouldn't have thought it was him.
It's really weird that you bring that up, because I remember it in lockdowns. That's when I took the Talksport gig, that breakfast show gig. And I have listened to Talksport ever since I was little, because my dad was like a massive listener.
Yeah, phoning in on the way home.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. Like he's like, even now, like I was, when we were younger, all I wanted to listen to was like music. Do you know what I mean? Like Capital or something like that when I was little. And it was always Talksport. So I had it on whether or not I wanted it. And he was such a listener that he would take, do you remember when like portable radios that could go in the shower came up, like waterproof radios? He had one of those for the shower, and it would always, even in the shower it would be on. It was everywhere. It followed us around the house.
Legend.
So it's been a voice in my ear since I was like quite little. And so basically, 20 years. And he is the biggest Talksport fan, represents that side of the audience, all that sort of stuff. So when I took over that show, my first show was day one of lockdown, and we had like no sport or anything like that, and all of the guests like Ali McCoy and everyone else, Fred Flintoff joined as well, weren't in the room with me, so they were like in different rooms.
Yeah.
And we had delays, we had dropouts.
Yeah.
It was honestly, and it's so early.
Because it's out of your control as well. It must be really hard to deal with.
The stress was unbelievable.
Yeah.
And like, I remember like leaving that show and being like, I wasn't myself, because you can't, like, none of your jokes land when there's a delay.
Yeah.
You're creating chemistry, you're laughing at times that it's not funny because you're filling space.
Yeah.
And I was just like begging, I was like, please don't judge me on this. But for the first 3 months, we had no sport, so like we couldn't do anything about it, and we were doing like quizzes on quizzes, and it was shit. And I hated it. I honestly hated it, and I got really depressed, because it was. You remember like lockdown was, you couldn't, if you wanted to leave your house, you could go for a short walk, and you couldn't even sit down on a bench.
Yeah.
And I didn't have a garden, and I was living on my own at the time. And I honestly slipped. I just slipped into this like really dark place. It was bad, and I didn't know how I got there. And I was speaking to a friend of mine who's really switched on with just like stuff like this, like just the way that your brain works. And he's been depressed as well. And I'm not saying I was depressed clinically or anything like that.
But knowing that you're definitely not yourself.
You're just sad, aren't you? You're just in like a really shit place. And I remember speaking to him, and he was really good actually during lockdown. And he said to me, read this article. And he sent me this article, because I was like, I need to leave this job. And he sent me this article about imposter syndrome. And I read it, and I was like, oh my God. And everything was like a tick, 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 tick. Your mind playing tricks on you.
Yeah.
And the fact that high flyers in all sorts of businesses and walks of life have this imposter syndrome suddenly kind of makes you feel like, oh, like it's not just me against the entire world. Other people feel it. Yeah. And you're right. People that you would never expect to feel it actually feel it.
Yeah, it's amazing to hear, because there was my mate Steph. He sent me I think it was a YouTube video. It was like a TED talk on this guy talking about imposter syndrome, and he said the same thing of like everyone in like the highest walks of life. A lot of the most successful people share that, because they're constantly kind of pushing themselves, or like in places they're not super comfortable, and like taking on new things. And naturally, if you're gonna take on a new job and you're suddenly leading this talk show, it's like uncharted territory for you. So you're naturally gonna feel a little bit out of your depth, which is good.
Yeah.
But it's still a weird sensation, even like after doing it for so many years, to still feel like, even like during interviews, suddenly I'm just like, wait, what am I doing? Oh my God, I'm actually like interviewing this person. So it's weird though, isn't it?
And also, you read people's mannerisms and you are paranoid that they are judging who you are, why you're here, what your credentials are.
Yeah.
But they're not. All they're thinking is, don't say something you're not supposed to say. Like, they've probably got their own piece of imposter syndrome as well.
Everyone's talking in their own head of like, don't fuck this up, don't fuck, in their own way.
There's like two things that I want to tell you about that as well. So this guy, who I to be honest, now I'd class him as one of my best friends, because of the times that we've both had in our respective industries, where we've both been rock bottom and felt really shit about ourselves. We've spoken to each other, and he sent me that imposter syndrome thing, and I sent him this, it was a TED talk as well.
Nice.
And it was this woman called Brene Brown, and it's about being in the arena on your own and only allowing anybody to criticize you if they've been in that arena too.
Okay, nice.
So you can put it across anything, any kind of business or job that you've got. And I think it especially works with people like us, whose jobs are basically there to be criticised and critiqued.
Yeah.
And her most important thing is like, you're allowing people to judge the job that you do who have no idea how to do the job that you do. So why are you allowing that to happen?
Yeah.
And I think now, with every other pressure that comes with life, having a constant stream of social media is so damaging.
Yeah, it is horrible, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because I was going to ask you this before. If there's one aspect of your job and what we do that people just totally underestimate or maybe think isn't as hard as it actually is.
I tell you what, for me it is when you are presenting on TV, on something like that, versus radio, they're different jobs entirely. On radio, it's the small pieces of air that to have a conversation on air and make it sound natural and let it roll and lose all of those like awkward silences.
Yeah.
That in itself is a job. And then on top of that, you've got to get all your facts right. You've got to get your timings right. You've got to make sure that you give equal amounts of opportunity to people who want to speak, balance the argument. There is so much in that job. The hardest part for me was reading the scripts because I hate reading.
Yeah.
Like, I would rather you bullet point everything and I do it myself. And I have made a lifetime in my work of not having auto cue because I hate it. And if you can be fluid and natural, that makes you a better presenter. So when I went to Talksport, and the way that they script is you come back from a break and they'd suddenly throw a news story at you, which you haven't had a chance to read yet.
Yeah.
They probably cut and paste from an article, and then you've got to get through it. And it's not words, and it's like not words that you'd use because it's a written article. So like, you know, Jose Mourinho was thrilled with the performance, and I'm like, when would I ever use the word thrilled? I don't. So the learning curve for us lot working together was like, please, like, don't script me, just bullet point, or give me a chance to read the article and I'll regurgitate it myself.
Yeah.
So those things are quite hard with radio because it changes every section. You can have a running order the night before.
And then it just
I don't
totally
read
flips,
it.
yeah.
I'd never read it because it changes so much.
Because you're sick
point.
of your job.
No, it's just there's no point because it will change so quickly.
Yeah.
So don't tell my producer that. I'll read it in the morning, but again, it will change from the night before through the show. Telly is so different as well because you're not only thinking about everything that you have to say, you're also thinking about like what's my hand doing?
Yeah.
Do I look alright?
My shoulders down.
Is my face too like taut or something like that? There's all these different and also telly's worse because you have so much going on in your ear at the time.
I hate that
so much.
I think that is one of the hardest things to do. Having someone in your ear to give you like, you know, beats and stuff to hit, and you're just like, right, okay, we've only got 30 more seconds of it. And I'm speaking to Josh about this because he had that throughout the whole Euros with the Lions Den, right? And then I did one kind of roaming reporter one with Dens in the first weekend. And so I had to have that in my ear, and we were all linked up. Me, Josh, the producers back in St. George's Park, and the producers on set in Kennington where I was. Everyone talking and trying to be like, okay, right now, Josh, intro. And I've only ever had that once before, and I was like, I forgot how hard it was to then hear it, take it in, but also forget about it and actually just focus on chatting and then reacting to, I was chatting to Glenn Johnson, listening to his answers and being like, oh yeah, cool. And then instead of, okay, next question. And then I'm like, oh my God, I just can't, what am I doing?
Yeah.
So I didn't realize that is again, one of the, I think something that people wouldn't realize is like so difficult. And now I have so much respect for, now that I've been there, I'm in the arena. I've been in the arena. Now I can realize it's like, it's so hard.
Yeah.
Really impressive if people can do it.
The worst bit is when a producer says something to you about like, okay, wrap it up after this, or go to this one next, or wants to ask a question, and you've got everything in your head and you know what you want to say, and then he'll speak over your interviewee's answer and you won't hear what he said, and then you're like, oh shit, like, and sometimes they might throw you a question back, and then you
like,
go, anyway.
Okay. You're like, okay, thanks. So
you just like mugged them off, and people are like, why did you do that? But also like your brain, like under pressure, your brain does the most maddest things. Your mind does. Maybe like, I always think I have a bizarre brain anyway. Like I'm sure when I was younger I had ADHD.
Everyone does.
It's just something.
Everyone's weird in their own ways.
Syndrome, isn't it?
Yeah.
I always remember it was so bad. I was doing Super Sunday and I used to do team news. I thought, oh, I nailed that. And it was always the most difficult part of my job because you're given 2 minutes before you have to break it live. So you don't have a lot of time doing the ins and outs. I can't remember the game, but there was like 5 changes on both sides or something like that. So you've got to do all, this person's injured, this person's suspended. Yeah. That's a genuine swap. Why has he done that? All that sort of stuff. And I remember being like, right, nailed that team news, really chuffed. And this was at a time where I used to look at Twitter while I was working, and sat down and I was like, right, no one can have a go at me about that. My producer was happy with me and stuff. Fresh Twitter, and it was like, why is John Joe Shelby playing today? And it would like Newcastle was not even playing, and I was like, what? And I'd basically, instead of saying John Joe Kenny, I'd said John Joe Shelby, and everyone was like, what's John Joe Shelby doing? And I remember being like, my dad's a Newcastle fan, and this was like around 2016, so it was like we were all like, oh, I wonder if John Joe Shelby's going to get a shout in the bloody Euros, all that sort of shit. And I don't even know why. It was the season afterwards. He just, because of John Joe, he just crept into my head. But the scariest point for me was I didn't even register I'd said it.
Yeah.
So I was like, this is a perfect read. Like,
Because you are on autopilot, aren't you?
And sometimes it just happens and your brain like shortchanges you. It's really annoying. Yeah. But it's funny for me now, but at the time it hurt me because like someone clipped it up on Twitter and was like, this is why women should stay in the kitchen and all that sort of shit.
So
and I was just
bad.
like, oh my God, you're not afforded any mistakes.
Yeah.
Like that's TV for you.
Yeah.
And because of this like age where you can rewind, pause, film, social media, you're fucked. So like, and anything you do.
Are you on social media now? Like you're on Twitter and everything, right?
Yeah.
And you actually stay up to date and you try and stay clear of it a little bit.
It's a real tug of war. During that time, my first season doing the show, during lockdown and all that sort of stuff, I had to delete Twitter off my phone.
Really? It was that bad?
Because the problem was, Talksport is opinion radio. So Sky, like, don't really get any hate on Sky because you're not really giving an opinion.
It's fairly factual. It's reading information.
Yeah, exactly. Talksport, I had to really work for their respect and for their trust and for their, I suppose, for them to like me in that role. I had to really work for that.
When you say them, do you mean Talksport or you mean the viewers and the audience?
The listeners, the audience, however they're listening. And my producer at the time was like, the way it had been put out there was like, it's a new dawn, like, you know, Alan Brazil's going for 2 days a week. And then they just shoved me and it was like Gloria Woods. And you give that to an audience that's used to somebody for 20 years. And then you make it a female and then you make out like, I didn't feel like the way, I wanted to do it quietly.
Yeah.
I just wanted to take
be almost
steps.
sort of like babied in a little bit, you know.
I wanted it like that, but it was like a big thing. And it was at a time where the world was so angry, like COVID had just happened.
Yeah.
And
everything's so polarised, isn't it? So it's either you're for or against something.
Exactly.
So then as soon as it's a woman into this thing, it's
it was just hideous.
Yeah.
And I always remember Freddie Flintoff said it as well. He was like, he got the same. And he was like, I never, even taken over Top Gear from Clarkson, he was like, I've never experienced hate like that.
Really?
Yeah, the Talksport online audience are different to the listeners. They're different.
So vocal, right?
They are so spiteful and vocal and really go for you. And one of my bosses, I remember one day I was like, I genuinely don't want to do it. I don't want to do it anymore.
Oh.
And he was like, look, my best advice to you is do what you always do and just go and win them over. I was like, fuck. Because so as soon as somebody challenges you, that's when you kind of go, oh, all right, fine, I'll do it.
Yeah.
So I always had that in my mind, just win them over. And then as soon as sport came back and we had something to talk about and you can kind of prove to people.
You know your shit.
Yeah.
You know you're good at presenting it.
Yeah. Then it just got a lot easier and now it's fine. So like you get through shit, you do eventually.
It's always, you look back and there's probably so many examples of like those times where you're like, I'm out of my depth, keep doing it. Okay, I'm slightly less out of my depth. Oh, now I'm fine. Yeah. It is like that, I think, every time. And I think that's obviously, it's quite a good thing. It's brave, but it's a healthy thing to keep doing in your career because that's when you know you're keeping on progressing.
Yeah. I always remember I had a job as a waitress when I was 16. I almost cried on my first day because I just didn't know where anything was and I didn't know how to use the till. And I thought I'd never be able to learn how to use this fucking till. Excuse my language, but it was at the time awful. And I figured it out. And then once I learned how to use it, I still think about that till. Because anytime I have this job, a new job where I don't think I can do it, I think about the till. And I'm like, well, you figured the till out. So you're like, you'll figure this out. And you always do if you work hard enough.
Yeah, exactly. That's it. If you trust your work ethic as well, like, you know. And also, that's a really like tangible way of being like, you can literally learn. Yeah. So it's like, there's a till, there are buttons, I've now remembered them, I know them all. Rather than like presenting is it's like an intangible thing of like knowing you can get better. It's like, because it's personal preference and the way you deliver stuff, it's not as tangible as like buttons. Now I know all of them, I'm sick.
Presenting's funny because you come across so many different people in the world And your knowledge is never going to be, my knowledge will never be Ali McCoy's knowledge. And I always wanted to be the most knowledgeable person in the room. So I'll never stop reading. I'll always, like, everything I do on social media, I'm absorbing everything.
Yeah.
I follow everyone because I want to
consume a lot.
Exactly.
Right?
It's all about consumption, literally. And the best thing that you can do if you want to go into presenting sport or reporting on sport is just never ever stop reading. And even like newspapers are like Die and Breed and all that sort of stuff. Like, know who all the journalists are and know what you like.
Yeah.
And as soon as you become so obsessed with something and immersed in it that you don't miss anything. So that job on Talksport, people always ask, like, do you get in 3 hours early? And you're like, no, because I'm only topping up knowledge now. Like,
exactly.
You know everything, and you never take a step out of it because it's literally your life. So that's how I stay on top of it, but also enjoy it.
Yeah, it's sort of in a similar vein to like knowing your stuff as well. It's like never pretending to know something you don't.
Yeah, don't.
Because also, if you don't know something, then you don't know it. But like, don't pretend, because then you will eventually. You might get away with it once or twice. Yeah. You will get found out.
Yeah, and ask questions. There's literally nothing wrong with asking questions. That's why you're there. Like, you have these experts. They're the ones that have done it on the pitch. So just being genuinely curious is one of the best traits I think you can have.
100%. Going on from that, I would love to know if there was one person that you've now like worked with, right, throughout, TV or radio or whatever, that like you were genuinely impressed. Obviously, a lot of people you work with really good at what they do, right? But is there one person that you remember being like, this person is so good at their job?
Pundit, can I have a pundit?
Yeah.
Neville.
Gary Neville.
Yeah, Gary Neville.
You genuinely like, you're sick.
Yeah, just think he's the best guy for many different reasons. When I first met him, I was working on a Friday night football, and I was like put in there just to do like bits of reporting and stuff like that. And I was terrified of him because I'd never worked with him. I'd seen him around Sky all the time, and like I know everything about him, but I never worked with him.
Yeah.
And when he's not on air, and if he doesn't know you, he just looks stern, doesn't he, in general? Yeah, of course, yeah. And you know his reputation and all that sort of stuff and whatever. So I was terrified of him. First day I ever worked with him, I remember it was at Brighton, and Kelly Cates was there as well, and the three of us, I had to interview both of them. And he was so great, and he asked loads of questions, and he was genuinely interested, and he made me feel like one of the team. Yeah. And I always remember he invited me to the Christmas party, and it was like Jeff Shrews, Kelly Cates, Jamie Carragher, Gary Neville, the producers.
These people who have been there for years as well. Yeah.
Me on the end of the table, and I was just like, oh, and I felt so out of place. Yeah. And but he was so welcoming, and honestly, I've said this before about Gary Neville. What I love about working with him, whenever I work with him, is that he drags your standard up. Because if you're below par and you're not on his level, it shows. Yeah. So you always want to meet his level, and match his level. So I'll work harder when I know I'm working with Gary. Like I'll speak to him beforehand, and I'll be like, right, this is what I'm thinking, and he'll always be like, well, just fine, do whatever you want. And I'll be like, no, like I want to know more and I want to do more because I want to be at the same level as you.
That's amazing.
Yeah, and he's wicked. And the another really great thing about Gary is he is a champion of women. So he's got little girls. He's got like 2 little girls, and I'm convinced, I've never asked him this, but I'm convinced he, and obviously his wife, lives with women. So he obviously understands women and sort of sees why you need to maybe in some scenarios just give them a little bit more support. Yeah. And I've always been appreciative of that from him. Yeah, I just think he is...
What a guy.
I will never work with Gary and not learn something.
Amazing. That's like, it really reminds me of like, did you watch The Last Dance, the doc about Michael Jordan, and literally hearing from Michael Jordan and his teammates being like, he was just relentless, but it literally helped us because we had to raise our game. Yeah. Because it's Michael Jordan and he's outworking everyone. It's literally,
Gary
it reminds
Neville
me of that.
is the Michael Jordan.
Yeah, well, no, we're not going to give him that much.
Are we doing that?
Yeah, exactly. The Michael Jordan of broadcasting, Gary Neville. What did he used to do in his previous life? Oh, some sort of right back sometimes.
Really average right back.
Yeah, he was all right.
Just joking. Yeah. No, honestly, he's the best. And the way that he analyses things, I will forever watch him. And if I could, I write a lot of notes anyway, but if I could, I will always write notes because I just think there's something about the way, and the one thing actually, sorry, I know I'm talking a lot, but I guess that's the point.
That's the point of the show.
That's the point, isn't it? There's this one thing that I heard when I was working at Sky and just before I was working with Gary Neville.
Yeah.
And it was about Gary Neville as a commentator. So the first time he ever commentated, and he, do you know what? I think I actually heard this.
It was Martin Tyler probably, like
Yeah.
co-coms.
I think I actually heard this when he did the podcast with Joe Barton, maybe. Yeah. Joe Barton used to do a really good podcast and Gary was on it and it was one of my favourite episodes. And Gary said when he started commentating, he was putting on somebody else's voice.
Yeah.
And it was just like how I felt when I started reporting and presenting. And he was almost like, well, that was a good shot. And then, almost kind of saying things that he wouldn't normally say and using words that aren't in his vocabulary.
Yeah.
And the producer at the time was called Scott Melvin.
Okay.
And Scott Melvin said to him, pulled him aside and was like, why are you talking like that? And he was like, well, I thought that was what I'm meant to do. And he was like, no, like, just talk like you. Talk like the way that you talk all the time to your mates, to your teammates, to your family, whatever. So the next time he went and commentated, he just did him. And that was his breakthrough.
Amazing.
And then he just became Gary Neville, and who I think is the best commentator.
Yeah.
Co-coms, I think he's the best one.
Ali McCoy was also great, but
Ali.
during the Euros, Ali McCoy was
Oh my
also
God, he was sensational.
But yeah, anyway,
Nothing short of sensational. Yeah, so I always remember that because it's along the same lines as just like being authentic.
Yeah.
Always be authentic.
Yeah, and there is like finding your voice, isn't it? Literally, even for people you look at now, and it's like Gary Lineker back in the day had to find his voice in the same way.
And
Gary
he was
Neville.
dreadful, my mum used to say.
Yeah. Oh, really?
Right at the beginning, my mum used to say to me.
Gary Lineker was shit at his job. Imagine that.
Michelle, she used to say Gary Lineker, and she always says it to me. Anytime I have a shit day at work, she just goes, remember Gary Lineker was shit.
And you're like, oh yeah, I'm fine. This easy.
She genuinely says it. It's amazing.
That's so good. Okay, so Gary Neville's the OG. Ledge.
Yeah, 100%.
I love that.
I mean, there's loads of other great ones, but Gary, yeah.
Of course, yeah, just like step above. One thing I wanted to know, because this has affected me, right? With my job and like working in football, right? Has it at any point made you less of a fan or made you fall out of love with the game? Because for me, it's been when I was at Copper, fully loved it, loved my job, and I was so focused on football, there was nothing else, no other sport, nothing, right? There was a time at the end of that, and then I was like, sort of fell out of love with it. I didn't even watch Arsenal that much and whatever, and I was like, I just didn't, and now I'm kind of re-finding the love of it almost in the last like few months.
The big problem with Sky is the travel. So like the travel to games and the travel back is sometimes long if you're going to like
The
Burnley,
glamour of it.
Newcastle, like it's, I speak to people all the time, like young people, and they're like, oh, I bet it's the most amazing job. And I'm like,
It is, but it isn't.
Yeah. The what you see is brilliant, and that's obviously the best bit, but the bits around it are chaos. So the travelling event, last season it got to me, and the reason it did is because there were no fans there.
Yeah.
So that's the first time I've looked at my job and gone, I don't think I want to do this anymore.
Yeah.
And the buzz that you get when you cover a live sport, I don't know how it feels like to be a player, but there is a buzz for me as well. Like when I go pitch side and you look at all the fans and then the play, like I still love when you're allowed in the tunnel, which you always were before COVID. I always want to take an area behind the players that when they walk out, so you can see that the two lines and all those little bits behind the scenes, and it still wows me. I still think it's the best moment ever.
It is unbelievable. There is like live sport.
It's nothing like it.
It's sort of like live music as well. There's always sport and there's always music that you can watch, right? But it's being in that moment where the energy is so high, and it's like this. I don't know. It's the fact that no one knows what's going to happen, and this is fucking amazing. You know what I mean?
Sitting there,
and it's such a basic thing to almost realise, but then when you're there, you do realise like that's why we're all here.
Yeah. Which is why when there were no fans, it just felt like...
Was that crap for you? Like, it was boring?
Honestly, I can't explain it. Like, and I know people will say, well, at least you got to go to the games, but I'm just saying like how it felt. Like, it suddenly felt like a job.
Yeah, I was about to say that. It's like, it must have just felt like I'm doing a reporting job. I'm like, rather than like, I get to just live my life and this is what I do. It's like literally a reporting job.
Yeah, and they felt it too. You could tell, like, it was a slog for everyone involved. Everyone was kind of like, let's just get through this. Let's, and it was a season and a half, it was a long time in the end. Next season will be, the only thing is, I remember driving to games and speaking to my producer and being like, oh, fuck, like, I don't think this is for me now. And I was getting really down about it. And then as soon as you got there and you go live and you start talking about things, I suppose you start interacting with actual people,
Yeah.
it would kick in again.
Yeah.
And then you'd kind of go, okay, I know why I'm here. But yeah, it was tough last season.
Yeah. Has that changed your perspective at all, like in terms of the future of like this is what you want to do still?
Well, I think that whole season and a half, you almost have to park it because it's not a real representation.
It doesn't exist.
Yeah, it just doesn't exist. Like Liverpool were never champions. Like
Yeah,
City never won it.
exactly.
It doesn't happen. You almost have to park it and go, right, let's just reassess and see how next season is.
Yeah.
And I guarantee it'll be back again. But no, it didn't. It's not taken the shine off of how I feel about sport. It does make me view it in a different way sometimes.
Okay.
Like I will really analyse in a game of football, if I'm watching it with my friends and family on telly, I'll be really interested in what happens at half time. So away from the game, I'll be interested in what points they're picking up on, what questions they're asking. Like that's the way my brain works.
Okay. Nice, interesting. Okay, and with like DAZN boxing, obviously you love like a lot of sport anyway.
Yeah.
But is that like going to be a big part of your future? You want to like do more? This for
me was so like the first fight camp was insane. Like it was so good.
Yeah.
And the good thing about the crossover, I remember when I took that job and people were like, what does she know about boxing and all this sort of stuff? And like, we actually do a lot of boxing on Talksport.
Yeah.
We interview a lot of fighters and like, what's been amazing is like for the first couple of weeks, a lot of that has crossed over. Like I worked with Josh Warrington and Kid Galahad, and just before their fight, 2 years ago now, we had them both on Talksport and it was brilliant. And they were both talking about like the importance of the fight that was coming up. And like Kid Galahad, I always remember, was talking about the fact that he doesn't have a family, a wife, kids, like Josh Warrington does, and like his life and his soul is literally into boxing. Then when I was interviewing him post-fight, and it was, I don't know if you got to see it at all, Jazza Dickens, it was amazing. He was brilliant. For Kid Galahad, it was a brilliant performance, but also like the best night of his life, like IBF world title, like all that sort of stuff. And his post-fight interview, because I'd learned all that about him like a couple of years ago, it gives you a lot more empathy, and it makes you much more. This is what I'm talking about absorbing information, so that like whenever you see these people again, you remember what you spoke to them about, and it just influences what you say to them. And I spoke to him afterwards, and he was like, thank you for giving me the platform to like tell my story. Amazing. And like helping me out in telling my story. Yeah. And that really meant a lot to me, because I just thought, there's something about boxing, I've never worked in it before. Yeah. There's something about it that I really like and that I'm really drawn to. Okay. So it feels like I'm getting that like new exciting buzz again about something that you have when you start a new job. Yeah. And I love it, like it's wicked. I've only done 2 fights, 2 fight camps there, and it's so cool. That's so good. So next 5 years, obviously we've literally been talking about literally we've been talking the whole thing about like never had a plan, don't need a plan. But like do you have any like aims or targets of like this is what I want to be doing eventually at some point? Or I really want to work on the World Cup. I really do. Me too. Yeah. It'd be sick. Yeah, it'd be great. Like I want to host football. I want to host live football. That's been like my aim for a long time. So even though I say I've not got a 5-year plan, like it's just always my goal. Still an aim to have. Yeah, it's just always my goal. So I mean that is a big goal. But it's like next year, Qatar, for example. Yeah, we've only got 18 months. Hosting. It's the same way that Alex Scott, for example, like she's been amazing, and I've talked to her. Hopefully, get her on for next season as well, because she said she would. So I'm holding her to it. Come on, Scott, do it. It's not that bad. She's obviously been amazing, and her progression in this field as well has just gone crazy. And then like her hosting like the Olympics is sick. Like, so something like that, basically, like your equivalent, like World Cup. Yeah, sick. It would just, for me, it would just be like the pinnacle of everything. Like I would do anything for that job. Like 18 months time, like now is just about working towards trying to get that. And being like, when you are a freelancer, it's up to you really. You've got to try and take those steps to match them all together, I suppose, and get that opportunity. So you're going to do it. 100%. You've put it out there now, and obviously it's just you in it. You're going to get there. Isn't it? Yeah, exactly. No, you will. Honestly, I would put like money behind you doing it. I believe in you that much. Really? I mean, yeah, obviously. How much? No, depends how big your World Cup money is going to be, so I can recoup some of it. Yeah, but I think genuinely, I think whether it's a 5-year plan or a 1-year plan or an 18-month plan or whatever, like having goals, I think are actually important. Like, maybe not the exact like 10-step or whatever, but like having goals and having a direction is great, but if you don't have one, it's just not, and everyone's so different, aren't they? It's not the end of the world. No.
Amazing. Woodsy, thank you so much for
Thank
coming on
you.
the show. I do appreciate it.
I
What a
love
way
it.
to end it. Final episode, it's Laura Woods.
Oh man, are you going to do another one though? Another series?
Yeah.
Who's your wish list, Scotty?
So, Will Shear, Alex Scott,
Arsenal themed.
KSI,
Yeah.
hopefully. Yeah, there's a few. Guys, I hope you enjoyed. Thank you so much for tuning in to this episode and for the whole season since the show began. Honestly, I thank you so much because I just started a show and that's it really. And obviously, Woodsy, thank you so much for joining
Thanks
me as well.
for having me. Thanks for my
Absolutely
tea.
Obviously, follow her out. You'll see her on Sky and World Cups and everything, so you'll know her. But anyway, thank you guys so much. I love you all. Like, comment, subscribe for more. And stay tuned for season 2 coming soon.